Great, we are live. Hello everyone and welcome to What Works webinars from KHT. This will be our second webinar and we have a treat for you this time. Our webinar will be tackling the quality assurance in the higher education sector. And we have an excellent lineup for you today. We have Dr. Stephen Jackson from UK. We have Dr. Jason Fitzsimmons from the president of Manipal University, and we have Mr. Mohammed Miraj from Middlesex, Dubai. So this time I will not do long introduction because we have a lot of content to share with you. So without further ado, I'll hand it to my colleague Magnus, who will do a quick icebreaker for you. Magnus, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you so much, Al-Mehtar. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I thought we'd do two quick icebreaker Menti questions right now. So if I could ask you all please to log on to
Magnus, your microphone's on.
You're on mute, please. Thank you.
Have I been on mute the whole time or no? Okay, I'll repeat myself. Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for this. We will now move on to the Menti question. So if I could ask you all to move on to menti.com, and you'll see the code in the live chat feature there. It's 7457516. And I will share my, just one second here. Great. Can you all see my screen? Yep. Okay. We'll start with a quick icebreaker questionnaire with the first question here. And the question is, quality in higher education, what does it mean to you? So what does quality in higher education mean? Be grateful for your answers there, for your quick 1-2-worded answers. Does quality mean high ranking, for instance? Does it mean reputation, possibly? Does it mean competency of lecturers or clarity of outcomes? What springs to mind? First respond here is student success. Fantastic. Setting quality indicators is fantastic as well. What about employability upon graduation? Is that something that springs to mind? Outcomes. Fantastic. Better international rankings and great results across all indicators. Wonderful. Processes and procedures leading to outstanding student experience. Wonderful. Got some more answer. Oh, more. Student satisfaction and achievement of learning outcomes. Excellent student support. Fantastic. Good student experience. Yeah, definitely. Maintaining quality of content delivered to students. Absolutely. High level student service. Fantastic. Wonderful. Let's move on to the next question. Next question is, what has been the greatest challenge over the past year with adopting quality assurance practices stipulated by UKAB and KHT? What has been the greatest challenge over the past year? Has it been defining quality, for instance, and understanding what quality looks like? Potentially, you know, intention is there, but delivery or outcome is difficult to assess. What about the role of quality assurance in distance learning? Has that altered things? So first answers here are assessments and exams online. That's been the greatest challenge. Uncertainty for planning purposes. Definitely, I think that goes for all of us in the education sector, is this constant uncertainty. What about communication? Communication to your stakeholders, for instance. Assessing students' work, yeah. Different quality frameworks in different countries, absolutely, absolutely. Thanking you for those answers. Outcome is difficult to assess, for sure, for sure. Assessment of quality assurance for hybrid learning, absolutely. Moving quickly to meet new reality, yeah, Fantastic answers there. Really appreciate your answers. I'd like you to all stick to this page, to menti.com, and we'll continue back after the presentation and the QA. So I want to thank you. Last one is student engagement. Absolutely difficult. Thanking you so much, and I'll hand over to Al-Mehtar again. Thank you. Over to Al-Mehtar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Magnus. Now we are going to our guest speakers. First of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Stephen Jackson. He's a member of the University Quality Assurance International Board, UK. Dr. Stephen, please, you have the board.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone, from a very wet and windy United Kingdom. Very pleased to have the opportunity to be with you for this webinar. Let me just see if I can set up my presentation first of all.
We may have lost him there, yeah.
Al-Mehtar, I think he's having some technical problems. You're on mute.
Would you like to proceed?
Oh,
yeah,
here
can
we
see you
go.
again. Fantastic.
Apologies, I lost the link.
Yeah.
It's okay. Welcome back.
Can you give me some help to setting up my PowerPoint presentation?
Maya, do you have this PowerPoint presentation you can start sharing from your end, possibly, or?
I think Mehtar, you do?
Yeah. Al-Mehtar, do you have the copy? Or should we proceed with? You're on mute, Al-Mehtar. You're on mute.
My apologies. Okay, we'll improvise here. We'll proceed with Dr. Jason. And once the technical issue with Dr. Jackson have been resolved, we'll put him back as second speaker. Dr. Jason, my apologies for putting you on the spotlight quickly, but thank you for understanding. Dr. Jason is the academic president of Manipal University in Dubai. Dr. Jason, please proceed.
Thank you very much, and I'll just share my slides here. Just one moment. Just let me know if you can see those slides okay.
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. Okay, thanks very much, everyone. And as said, I'm academic president here, but quality assurance is something that's always been pretty close to my heart, having been involved in processes back in Australia and in Malaysia and in Singapore a number of years as well, and now shifting over to Dubai and looking at quality assurance with the process here. So I think it's a very, very timely topic. Certainly the shift towards geographic reach of institutions has been progressing over the last few years. But I think the most recent disruption we've had to education through this current pandemic has really got us all thinking about, what is quality in higher education, particularly as we looking at new ways of delivering education and all the issues that come with that. So I think it's a very, very timely process in terms of this particular topic there. Now, if I can just go to the slide here. So Manipal itself, Manipal Dubai is a branch campus of the main campus back in India, Manipal Academy of Higher Education. We've been here since 2000, around 4,000 alumni, and campus obviously at Dubai International Academic City. And we fall under that branch campus perspective there. So in terms of quality, there's a responsibility on us as a branch campus to try and achieve a couple of things. And one of them is to have comparable systems and processes with the home campus. And I think that's very important. A second point to that is that in terms of quality assurance, I think it is important to have the students getting the same experience at either the branch campus or the home campus there, and the same learning outcomes that come with that. So quality assurance and quality systems have to be in place to make sure that quality is maintained. Now, what we do in Manipal Dubai, and in terms of what we do in terms of the quality assurance, from a number of angles. I just put this diagram up here to give you a bit of an overview of the way we approach quality assurance at the home campus and at the branch campus to ensure consistency. You can see on the slide there the top middle there, the home campus. Being based in India, it comes under UGC. It's accredited by the National Assessment and Accreditations Council of India, and they look after the quality assurance of Manipal Academy Higher Education home campus. For us as a branch campus, we don't directly come under NAC, but there's a bit of separation there. However, there's other quality assurance processes we go through to make sure we achieve that. Certainly coming into the UAE, coming into Dubai, we have the Knowledge and Human Development Authority and the UCAB quality assurance there, which does wonders. It covers a few essential areas of quality assurance, particularly around program structure, curriculum, student assessment, and it has done well to ensure that quality is maintained consistent with the home campus there. Now, although it's not quality assurance per se, I think the other introduction that I've seen that I think works well for at least getting institutions to think about quality has been the rating system. And I think besides looking at the relative ratings of institutions, a bigger outcome from this particular exercise is it is aligned with quality assurance setups globally, and it enables each institution to try and maintain high quality across all areas there. So I think it's been a wonderful introduction to have that, and certainly I think it's got all the institutions in Dubai reaching that quality that we want to project to the globe. And I think as a group, the onus is on all of us as institutions to try and maintain high quality so that externally potential students see Dubai as a place where there's quality education. So it helps all of us to do that. Now again, the UCAB essentially quality audits the branch campus, but not necessarily the home campus there. So there can be a slight gap in terms of quality assurances across some processes there. However, one of the things that has worked for Manipal Dubai, and I think we're going to continue to progress on, is international accreditation. And these can be either at school level or a particular program level. And the way Manipal Dubai has approached this is to go for these international accreditations along with the home campus. So the quality assurance of our schools and programs is done simultaneously, both at the home campus and the branch campus, to really ensure that consistency of outcomes there. So that's worked well for us, and I'll talk about a couple of examples, quick examples of that. Besides that, we do have ongoing quality assurance processes between the two institutions. On the left-hand side there, the branch campus is intimately involved in the board of studies at the school level and faculty level at the home campus to ensure we're aligned in terms of pedagogy, course structure, learning outcomes. We're also actively involved in all academic council meetings to look at university level quality assurance there. And that's one component. Another component we have is around the academic process compliance audits. And that's particularly around the academics plus assessments. And I'll talk a little bit more about that to ensure there's consistency and moderation across the assessments and across the academic side of things. And the last aspect there is the quality and compliance department. So under NAC, there's a requirement to have a quality assurance cell, and we have that in Manipal home campus to ensure quality and audit across the university. And we have a similar function here, the quality focus group, and we're getting those two departments working together to ensure we have similar processes and systems in place with the aim of continually improving on quality. So there's a number of internal aspects and then the external aspects that maintain that quality assurance in the long run. In terms of the academic process compliance, which is done here at the branch campus, we have a number of facets to that there. So in terms of assessment, which is usually a very important part of quality assurance, we do have internal moderation of question papers, along with learning outcomes, and making sure there's alignment of those with the assessment outcomes. And we also have additional layers there for large subjects. We have both not only internal moderation, but external moderation. So the course faculty assess scripts. There's a subject matter expert here that assesses the scripts, and Mahi India is involved in that process as well. Again, to make sure there's alignment with course assessment outcomes, results analysis, and so on there. On top of that, we have external moderation of our question papers and results through Mahi India. We prepare a report for that. That's further submitted into the KHDA as part of their quality assurance. And from time to time, we may share those reports as well with some of the external accrediting bodies that we work with there. So every semester we do a result analysis along with a student evaluation of teaching to ensure quality and processes across those. And that's shared with each of the chairpersons to make sure there's continual improvement across those areas. And once a year, we have an academic assessment audit carried out by the Quality Assurance Cell and the Registrar of Evaluation from Mahi India. And reports are generated to that to make sure there's consistent quality in line with what's happening at the home campus. So the scope of that academic process compliant covers quite a few areas in terms of the academic calendar to maintain consistency there, question paper setting and management of question papers, the evaluation process, along with grading results and issue of grade cards there, along with other aspects of quality assurance around the student appeal processes there. So we have that at least once a year, and that's a consistent part of the quality assurance that we have, particularly around the assessment and evaluation. Now, as I said, that one of the areas we're focusing on a lot going forward in terms of ensuring quality assurance, particularly in an international aspect there, is to try and go for more international accreditations. And these are typically at school level or at program level. I just had a couple of examples to take you through some of the areas and some of the schools that have undergone some of this process here and what it's done for us in terms of ensuring the highest quality educational experience across those schools. So our School of Design and Architecture, for example, is one of those that has undergone external accreditation. The stakeholders here is really the branch campus through our quality focus group, the Deputy Registrar's office, the Academics President's office, at the home campus as well at school level. The Faculty of Architecture and the Department of Design is involved in this process there, as well as at university level through the Registrar Evaluation and the Accreditation Quality and Quality Assurance Council that we have. So they're the stakeholders. In terms of the School of Design and Architecture, its flagship program is the Bachelor of Architecture program, which has been running in Manipal, Dubai since 2012 and accredited by the Council of Architecture in India. This is the same program run at the home campus. The Council of Architecture orders and quality assures these programs at both campuses there. And we undergo an annual accreditation by the Council of Architecture each year, which looks at not only the assessments and evaluations, but also across the usual perspective. You might see in a full quality assurance cell, which is around the infrastructure, around the faculty's efficiency, around the continuous quality improvements there, and in terms of the curriculum as well there. So one of the aspects of the external accreditation by the Council of Architecture is that it does look into the faculty sufficiency of our faculty and their qualifications, and quality assures the faculty on those. And also they have an annual visit to the home campus and the branch campus to do a quality assurance audit on the programs there. So we find that a very effective accreditation to make sure that the systems and processes are in place, are consistent across both campuses there. Very effective. School of Design and Architecture has also undergone some external accreditation through some of the external bodies. One we have at the moment there, Chartered Institute of Architectural Technologists, and we started that process in 2018 and received the In Principle accreditation March 2019 and long-term accreditation in November 2020. And again, as far as accreditation goes, as far as quality assurance goes, this is simultaneous at both campuses there. It looks across all the areas we'd expect to see in a quality assurance process, library and resources, facilities, future plans, and so on. And that's certainly one of the areas. So the School of Design and Architecture has been through this process, and they're still going through the process with some other programs as well to continually ensure the highest quality programs. Another example is our engineering department, School of Engineering and IT. At the moment, they're going through the accreditation process for the Institution of Engineering and Technology. They're doing this along with the home campus, and both campuses are looking at getting 4 programs accredited: mechanical, mechatronics, computer science and engineering, electrical and electronics. And it's a multidisciplinary body that accredits these particular programs at that particular level there. So they're in that process at the moment. And again, it's a system where it works at both campuses simultaneously to ensure that there's a consistent quality across those two institutions. So it's a 3-step process for the IET accreditation. Initial review followed by the advisory visit and a final accreditation visit to both campuses there. At the moment, both have been through to the advisory visit stage and passed that, and both campuses are now in that final accreditation stage there. It's a broad type of accreditation, and one of the reasons we wanted to go with this because it gives us a number of opportunities. And I think that all of us, when we look at quality assurance, it's not only meeting the minimum, but also thinking about how we can continually improve around that. How do we continually incorporate global best practices? So we're not only looking at the perspective of the local UAE market or the local India market, but we're also setting standards benchmarked against international programs and schools there. And that enables us to pursue other opportunities, international collaborations with some of the leading institutions there as well. In respect of what it does for us as a home campus or a branch campus, it does send a message, a signal to potential students that it's a quality program, and also improves the global mobility of our graduates there. So again, IET accreditation and across a number of areas, not only evaluation and assessment, but right through the process in terms of program learning outcomes, in terms of quality content and delivery, the assessment, of course, but also the other facilities and student support we have in place there. So again, what we see in terms of what worked for us is not only the normal quality assessment and quality assurance processes we have, but a learning for us was to become internationally recognized on the international accreditations, to really benchmark us, not against local or regional type of universities, but on an international level with what we've done there. And that's been as successful as us, and along with KHDA, UCAD, NAC, and the international accreditations, we're going to encourage other schools to go for international accreditations to really keep us on top of that quality assurance process. So thank you very much for that, and I'll leave it at that for the moment and stop sharing my slides and pass over to the next presenter.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Jason, for this excellent presentation. Dr. Jason shared with us his experience with Manipal University in Dubai. Now we'll move on to our second speaker, Dr. Stephen Jackson from UK. He's very familiar with most of the universities here in Dubai. And my colleague Magnus will be taking charge of the presentation. So, Dr. Jackson, if you proceed, please.
Thank you, and apologies again for the technical difficulties in getting my presentation up onto the screen. Very pleased to have this opportunity to say a little bit about transnational education quality assurance from the perspective of UCAB. UCAB has the responsibility for providing assurance about the quality of education delivered through the branch campuses. And it's a responsibility that we take very seriously in terms of ensuring that those students who study at branch campuses are getting the quality of education that they would reasonably expect. My own background, I'm from the UK. My experience has been in the Quality Assurance Agency in the UK. I worked there for many years as Director of Reviews. So I have a lot of experience in terms of organising reviews of institutions, but also a lot of experience in terms of identifying and defining and articulating what we mean by quality assurance and how that quality assurance can be recognised through the delivery of programmes in branch campuses. Transnational higher education is a term which I think is very widely used. It covers a wide range of different types of relationship between institutions. In the Dubai context, transnational higher education refers to high quality provision of qualifications and programmes offered by foreign higher education providers, ostensibly to support development in Dubai, part of a strategic initiative initially to open up the free zones in Dubai by inviting established and well-known higher education institutions to set up branch campuses and offer their programs through those branch campuses to enhance the higher education provision within the Dubai and also, of course, in the United Arab Emirates more generally. The branch campuses typically are wholly or partly owned by the home institution. They are part of the home institution and are recognised as an integral part of the way the home institution functions. I say partly owned, that there may be joint venture arrangements in terms of investment in the infrastructure and so on, but it's important to recognise that these are branch campuses. They're not separate entities in their own right. And similarly with the academic programmes and qualifications awarded by the home institution. It's not a validation arrangement or a franchise arrangement. They are academic programmes and qualifications that are delivered by the home institution and which are offered through the branch campus in Dubai. And in that sense, the quality and standards are assured by the same procedures that are used by the home institution in order to secure and to demonstrate the effectiveness of the quality of provision. From a UK perspective, the Quality Assurance Agency in the UK had the opportunity to look at how these transnational relationships worked through its own review of the home institutions. And we have in the past had a number of reviews of transnational provision in other countries in order to establish the security of those arrangements. That brings me on to UCAB's role. The International Board, I think, is an interesting and influential organisation that has been set up by KHDA to bring to the table expertise from around the world, from around the globe, in terms of how quality systems operate, and also to provide that input into the assessment of quality in the branch campuses from the home institution, from the systems and procedures that operate in different countries. We have representatives on UCAB from the United States, from other countries in Europe, from France and from Austria, from Australia, from New Zealand and elsewhere. It's a genuinely global committee or group which has the opportunity to assess what happens on the branch campuses in Dubai from an international perspective. We're keen to establish and to promulgate international standards in higher education, but we're also very focused on standards that have been set in the UAE and particularly in Dubai, because not only has the higher education got to meet the necessary levels of performance and achievement, but it's also got to address the objectives and strategic developments which are relevant in the UAE. So is that interesting balance between an international qualification but also local relevance in terms of its the opportunities it offers students to participate in developments in Dubai. UCAB has been set up by KHDA. It is an advisory committee. It brings expertise to the consideration of activities, and it has a number of functions and particular roles. We give approval to the establishment of branch campuses in the first instance. We have procedures for assessing applicant institutions that wish to establish themselves in the free zones in Dubai, and we are able to identify the extent to which campuses meet the expectations that are laid out by KHDA for high quality providers operating in Dubai. The whole approach that UCAB has adopted is one of assuring that what happens in Dubai is the same as what happens in the home country. It's the standards that are set by the home institution which need to apply equally in the context of Dubai. So approving campuses is a procedure which looks at the extent to which those requirements are met in terms of the establishment of a branch campus. But we also have a role in registering academic programs. The formal process of registration takes place through KHDA, but it's based on the recommendations that are provided by UCAB. And in our detailed considerations of the proposals for academic programs, and then subsequently in the cyclical renewal of those academic programs, we are able to look in some detail, not only at the quality of what is provided, but also at the arrangements in place within the branch campus in order to provide the necessary quality assurance. Those two roles, approving branch campuses and registering programs, I suppose are our two primary functions as an organisation, but we also do other things as well. We are currently now involved in conducting reviews of institutions, and I'll say a bit more about that in just a moment. And we have on occasions in the past conducted audits of branch campuses where there have been causes for concern, issues that need more detailed investigation in order to report to KHDA about the security of operations and about the maintenance of standards. And generally, as a global board, we are able to provide advice on international best practice. And that, I think, is an important consideration, that we want to ensure that higher education in Dubai and in the UAE more generally is addressing international standards and has a reputation in terms of its status internationally, as well as its status locally in terms of the operations of the branch campuses. The next slide is moving on to good practice in T&E. One of the things I think we are keen to do as a board is to promote good practice and to use the evidence that we gather from the international branch campuses, from the individual branch campuses, to inform developments across the network of branch campuses in Dubai. There are things that we look for when looking at applications for the establishment of new branch campuses or looking at the quality of individual programs. We want to ensure that these basic principles of T&E are well established within the institutions. Firstly, that they are legal entities, that the branch campuses have been set up with formal procedures to establish their status as entities operating in the free zones, and that they have proper recognition from legal authorities. Secondly, we want to see an effective operational relationship between the home institution and the branch campus. What is embodied in the what's called the HEP home, the Higher Education Providers Home Guarantee, where the home institution is taking full responsibility for what happens within the branch campus. And we've seen from Jason's presentation how that works in practice for individual branch campuses. We like to see robust internal quality assurance arrangements, again, reflecting what happens in the home campus. We want to see competent management and organisation of programmes, including increasingly online provision. And I'll say just a bit about that in more detail in just a moment. Secure conduct of assessment is important for security of standards and the provision of appropriate learning resources. These are the sort of headlines, the checklist that we use at UCAB when looking at the quality of transnational provision. Under each of these headings, clearly, there are a lot more detailed points in the manual that we use, which gives some understanding of how these issues can be operationalized and how they are recognized more generally through the review process. Moving on, just talking a little bit more about online provision. And clearly, in the current circumstances, because of the impact of the COVID pandemic, there has been a general shift of provision to online learning. This is not just something that's happened in Dubai, it's an international pattern. Certainly in the United Kingdom, the greater majority of higher education institutions have very rapidly transferred much of their provision to online learning. And that has brought with it, I think, some significant challenges in terms of how you maintain the quality and standards of the learning experience of students, in particular, when learning through the medium of IT delivery rather than the face-to-face contact with academic staff and with the colleagues and the general sort of a community of learning that you get on campus. That I think is a real challenge, but there are some points that I think are helpful when considering the quality assurance of online provision, which are again useful as a checklist when looking at the ways in which the online provision have been developed and delivered by different institutions. We've had some discussions at UCAB about the general quality of distance learning and online provision and come up with some proposals in terms of the issues that we would consider to be important in any overall assessment of the quality of online provision. And these are just, again, the basic checklist. First of all, looking at course design and structure. Are courses properly designed for online delivery, or are they simply adapted from what would have been delivered through face-to-face communication? And I think it's important that designing online provision, you go back to first principles and actually design provision which is appropriate for the medium of delivery. The same basic principles apply as within all course design about the focus on outcomes, about recognizing the importance of the student learning experience and so on. But moving on to my second point, that is also, I think, important in the context of teaching styles. You can't just transfer face-to-face teaching styles onto online learning. It does require a different type of approach in terms of using the opportunities presented by IT technology. And similarly, ensuring that there is appropriate equipment and technical support to enable students to engage effectively with online delivery. Technical support is particularly important, I think, where students have difficulties in terms of following online provision, but making sure that it's not only in place, but is easily accessible at all times by students is an important consideration that we look at when assessing online delivery. Resources. Online resources, freely available, genuinely appropriate for the course materials and enhancing the learning experience of students. Assessment arrangements is a particular issue. I think traditionally methods of teaching and delivery have focused on examinations as one of the main tools for assessment, proctored examinations in formal settings, which are not feasible necessarily for online provision. And there are now, I think, a wide variety of different approaches to assessment which can be adopted and applied, which are more appropriate, but which can be delivered in the same robust manner as more traditional forms of assessment. And finally, when looking at online provision, about the security of online activities, issues particularly like authentication of students and ensuring against problems of plagiarism or collaborative learning and so on are very important considerations in order to secure the standards of provision. And we like to see in any submission of online provision that there is appropriate and adequate coverage of these matters of security. So finally, taking me on to current developments, as I mentioned earlier, UCAB has recognised that there is value from maintaining regular contact with campuses and being able to keep up to date with what's happening on the ground in terms of provision. Not just in terms of following up on potential issues that have been addressed in previous reviews or ensuring that things are operating as effectively as we would like to see, but I think also from a point of view that UCAB wants to be aware of what's actually happening in terms of the experience of students. We meet round the table, we see documentation, we discuss issues, we make recommendations, but much of what happens clearly in branch campuses is the day-to-day business of engagement with students and the community of students. And in order to ensure that we are able to keep in touch and maintain those relationships, we have now instigated a series of campus reviews. The first ones were conducted in October, a review of Curtin University in Dubai and of University of Paris too. Very productive discussions with relevant staff from the institutions, which I think has given us more of an insight into the experience on the ground in the campuses, and which has been particularly valuable, I think, from our point of view, in terms of appreciating the quality of the learning experience on campus. So that's very briefly how we see things from a UCAB perspective and the expectations that we have in terms of the quality and standards of transnational provision. I'm very happy to take questions and to follow up on the questions that have been submitted a little later on. Thank you.
You're on mute, Al-Mahtar. You're on mute.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. Jackson. We appreciate your insights and your valuable information. And thank you, Magnus, for the support. I appreciate that. We will take all the questions by the end of the webinar. And for now, for the cherry at the top, Mr. Muhammad Maraj from Middlesex University, Dubai. Mr. Muhammad, you have the platform.
Okay, thank you very much, Al-Mahtar. I want to also thank the previous two presenters who have made my job quite easy. I realize I might be between you and lunch in many offices and in many settings, so I will try to keep the discussions brief and also maybe link it to some of the points that have already been made by colleagues before. So my name is Mohammed Miraj. I've been very fortunate to study, work, do research in an international branch campus setting that Stephen was just highlighting to us as a unique case of transnational education. And I'm tremendously inspired by the leadership of the country, particularly Sheikh Mohammed, who's this quote inspires me quite significantly. And it tells us a little bit about what we should expect in terms of our orientation to quality assurance and excellence in the higher education sector. Middlesex University, I will use that as a live case study to highlight some of the aspects of quality assurance and also perhaps share some of my reflections on what made us successful in our eyes, at least as far as our performance in this region has been. So we are a campus of Middlesex University in the UK, in north of London. We have got about 3,500 students, which is about 20% of the student body of the university. We operate a very, very diverse group of students who are based in the UAE, but also who come here just to study in Dubai. So we've got about 100-something nationalities, and they study across 70 programs from foundation through to postgraduate level. We're quite lean in our operations. We have about 90 odd faculty members and about 60 odd staff. But we have a very, very wide network of students and graduates around the world. And some of the key things I saw from Magnus's Q&A earlier on, that some of the audience members were saying things like outcomes are really very important when it comes to quality assurance, student experience and support is really, really very important. And we take great pride in the fact that our students often rate us, particularly in independent studies done by bodies like the KHDA, to over 85% overall satisfaction, and also the fact that our students consider themselves 100% employable when these independent studies are conducted. Here are some other accolades that we are very, very proud of. Some are on the success of ourselves as academics, and others are things that we are very proud of, the success of our own students when they are out there in their careers. So we are a university that is very international in its orientation. The university has, of course, a base in North London. Its history goes back to the 1800s, but also it has footprints in Europe, in Africa, of course, in the Middle East with our campus in Dubai. And that brings me to my first sort of reflection on what is essential for quality assurance when it comes to a branch campus. And I think one of the first things that is very relevant from my experience and working with Middlesex is the strategic focus. Our university takes great pride. It thinks internationally every time it makes a decision or takes an approach. And I think that is one of the key recipes for our success. In addition to these campuses, for example, we have nearly 200 partnerships. Stephen was talking about different types of T&E arrangements, collaborative partnerships, validation programs, franchise programs. We have about 200 of those relationships we manage in the UK, within Europe, and afield, so further afield. So we are really, really proud of that international orientation that our organization has. We're also extremely, extremely proud, like Mahe, to have achieved a 5-star rating from the KHDA on a higher education classification system that gave us some confidence, not only in our academic credentials and the way we manage the equivalency of our student experience and learning outcomes here versus Hendon, but also my second principle, which I think something Stephen also talked about, is the idea that to be relevant, to assure quality in higher education in an international setting, you've got to be relevant to the community in which you operate. So I think that has been quite an important focus for us in the way we manage our operations here and at our home campus. So they're very, very aware and well tuned to the requirements of our international operations and are very responsive to the criteria that classification systems like this put forward. We are often, students tell us that we are the university of choice, and we see that in the growth of our student body. Even in difficult years, we've seen a tremendous increase in our student enrollments. And again here, what I do believe is the recipe for that success in terms of being very, very student-centric. I'll show you a few more things slightly later on which highlight this aspect, but we do genuinely believe that we are all for our stakeholders, and we do need to be very, very student-centric in the way we design and execute international education. We are extremely diverse. We're very fortunate to be in this amazing part of the world where, you know, the East meets West. Students genuinely focus on coming here for careers, for education, and we do have all of the diverse groups of students represented on campus. But we genuinely want to encourage that diversity and inclusivity. So throughout our procedures, throughout our quality systems, throughout student engagement procedures, we are very, very focused on diversity and inclusivity. We have, for example, a care and concern framework, which includes a range of policies that support this idea of being a very diverse, inclusive, and tolerant student body. And that again reflects a lot of the values that we see Dubai put as priority. We've got a range of programs. I said we've got about 70 odd programs spanning a range of different schools, faculties, and departments. Some very, very specialist, very, very focused programs, increasingly becoming quite the flavor of the day, you know, programs in digital media, in fashion design, psychology with criminology is one of the latest programs we've offered. So we are getting into areas that are really, really quite relevant to the areas that Dubai sees priority. So trade, commerce, but also some of these other areas are areas we're proposing programs in. And there again, we need to ensure, as previous speakers have said, that the experience, the standards, the benchmarks are comparable between all campuses. So whether it is our procedures for curriculum design or review, whether it is assessment and evaluation, whether it is the external examination process that was covered very well in the Mahi presentation. You saw very, very strong, robust systems, very similar to what you would see in the higher education sector in the UK. We, for example, use the same external examiners as our home campus would use for similar programs. And so we make sure that the program administration delivers the expectations of our students and also of the regulators. We also have a substantial postgraduate offering, again, some common programs, but some very niche specialist areas. We've done very, very well when we've talked about our MScs in robotics and data sciences, but we've also, for example, created programs in areas which are very unique to us. The LLMs are increasingly becoming quite popular as an area of study for our students, both from our undergraduate law programs, but also from the wider region of law professionals. And here again, the core of that success is to ensure that standards for assessment and feedback are maintained. So colleagues before have said, you know, setting assessments is got to be a high quality process. It's got to have oversight from colleagues here, from our colleagues in London, from an external examiner. All the gradings have to be first mark here in Dubai, second mark blindly here, often moderated in the UK, and then at the external examiner level in the UK as well. So the robustness of this assessment feedback processes, all grades, for example, for Dubai and all campuses get published at assessment boards which are held in the UK. So they're common boards for all international provision. The same way they consider the grades for their UK-based students. And so that gives you a sense of confidence in the quality of provision at Dubai. We also have, you know, as I was saying, really new and interesting ways in which we grow our program portfolio. LLB with criminology and electronics engineering program, which is going to be quite interesting, and international arbitration law LLM. And when we design these new programs, the key quality assurance process that is involved is the validation process. Stephen was saying something about, you know, validation that ensures the resources, the capabilities of the institutions, the branch campuses, being able to provide that same standard of quality as students would expect at the home campus. And this is quite key. So the validations take place in the UK. They include panels which are a combination of staff here, staff there. Always the leadership of the program all sits in the UK, and they're the ones who support and drive that process of validation. And so that gives the sense of commitment of the home campus when it comes to international provision. Stephen had a very, very fascinating discussion on modes of study and the priorities for or good practices for online provision. And again, I would say very fortunate to have KHDA put out such good protocols for reopening when we were looking at the COVID crisis, because that enabled us to come up with two unique but very comparable models of delivery. So students are able to study online only, and there are a number of students who prefer to do that in their context. And then we've also got a blended learning model which allows students to do access face-to-face studies, but in totally safe, socially distanced protocols. And so those two modes of studies have worked really, really quite well. We see unique differences in our student body. Our graduate students, postgraduate students, as well as our graduating third-year students in undergraduate programs, lean towards more online studies. They've had the student experience on campus, and they're interested in now enhancing or looking at their career profile. So they're quite keen on doing most of their studies online. And we also see that for our foundation students, for our first-year students in undergraduate programs, they're quite keen to be on campus and get that experience. And so it's really quite helpful that the KHDA systems permit that dual mode, and we think that that has worked quite well. And to be able to do that, I think the core focus, the core principle that I'd like to reflect on in quality assurance is the notion of adaptive capacity. You read that about you read about adaptive capacity a lot these days in business. McKinsey, Harvard, everybody's talking about it, but we really had seen that happen in the case of Dubai. Again, the discussions from Maheb put that the focus on international accreditation for individual programs in really, really good spotlight. And I want to emphasize that. So we also focus a lot on developing those relationships with professional bodies to gain the same benefits that were highlighted before. I don't mean to repeat some of that information, but I want to highlight one very unique example from at least our provision, our MSc in Investment Management, which runs both in Dubai and Hendon. The London team encouraged our Dubai staff to seek CFA accreditation first. So the Dubai team put together the proposal that got CFA recognition and accreditation for the program, first for the UAE, then for our campus at home, and then for every other campus that offers that provision. And that again shows you that nature of maturity in terms of how the two campuses operate. So we've moved away from a parent-child sort of relationship to this equal peers kind of understanding on program levels. And that is something to think about. And here again, what is the benefit? The benefit is, of course, got to be student-centric. So the focus is on employability. Again, colleagues have talked about industry engagement. We work with industry in a range of different areas. So whether it's providing employment or internship opportunities to students, or working with Expo 2020 on consulting work, or developing leaders for the RTA. We've had a KIADI program, 50-something leaders from RTA have worked with us in doing that management leadership program, or having partners like Cisco who host the Cisco facility here and allow about 50 students every year to come out in addition to their academic qualifications with Cisco certifications. So there again, strategic partnerships plays a key role in ensuring very high quality assurance standards. Our student experience, sometimes we think, are we a university that teaches, or are we the ones that do lots of student activities really well? Because we do offer the student experience with a difference. Our students are absolutely fantastic in the way they take ownership and leadership and develop their own student engagement. That is really quite important, because particularly as we face some of the challenges of the pandemic, the core focus has to be keeping students engaged, and we're looking at ways of doing that digitally as well as we used to do when students used to be face-to-face. None of that is possible if you don't have happy employees. So just as much as you want to be a university of choice for your students, you have to be, I suppose, an employer of choice for your organization. So we are, I'm a prime example. I've been here since 2008, and I can't see myself going too many other places in a hurry, because it is such a fantastic environment in which to work and practice. So really the focus there has got to be on people as well. And that delivers results. So universities are about creating and disseminating knowledge. And so we do see, even for a teaching focused university like Middlesex, we see a tremendous amount of appreciation from external parties for our research achievements. So we've submitted work to the KHDA, to the National Research Council, and we get really, really positive feedback on the type of research that our academics put forward. That has to help both people and the institution grow. And so the focus there on the principle of growth orientation allows you, even for a teaching university, to emphasize the research achievements, particularly the achievements of our students. That statement at the bottom there, we're extremely proud of, because increasingly we're seeing our students publish their work on international stages. And all of this is about outcomes. I love that one of you in the beginning said the outcomes was one of the core things that quality means in higher education, and we take that very, very seriously. So our goal is to make students 100% employable. We do a range of things to facilitate that, and that gives us relevant metrics. In higher education, you could pick metrics of all sorts to measure your performance. We focus on the ones that are really, really quite relevant to the key stakeholders. So here are my quick reflections on TNE quality assurance. You've got to have strategic focus on TNE. You've got to systematically deploy and implement quality assurance. You've got to select meaningful outcomes and then measure them in a sensible way. You've got to constantly continue and refine and learn and improve, and that will have impactful results for your students, but also for all other stakeholders in higher education. So I know I've overshot 2 minutes of my time, but I'm really, really happy to have talked to an audience here, and also happy to take questions afterwards. Thank you, Medara. This is the end of my session.
Thank you very much, Muhammad. We appreciate your input. We appreciate your presentation. So also for the other speakers. Now we will go. I know we have already passed the time of the planned webinar, but this was a fascinating session, and we have so many questions that we received about registration and some other questions that been submitted through the live chat. So we will go for the question and answer segment right now. Allow me, please, to take some questions, and I will hopefully we will able to answer as many as you can. So I would ask you, please, try to make the answers as focused or as short as possible. So for the first question, actually the first and the third question here are very similar. We are talking about the role of quality assurance in distance learning. So any of the guest speakers who can talk about it. Dr. Stephen, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Yes, a very relevant question. And one which I think is being addressed by UK universities at the moment. What's going to happen after COVID and the development that's taken place over the past 12 months or so in terms of shifting provision online, I think has made fundamental changes in the nature of higher education delivery. I don't think it's likely that we're going to go back to the ways in which we worked in the past. There will be, I think, a much greater use of blended learning and also of full online learning. The question, as you say, is about can you sustain quality and standards through that medium of online provision? And I think the view that we had at QAA was that online learning is just a different medium for delivery. The fundamentals of quality remain the same. It's about good design, it's about appropriate learning opportunity, it's about student engagement, it's about robust assessment, and so on. So I think it will be a different world. I think we will have a lot more online provision which is well designed and well developed, and students will have different ways of engaging and also different ways of participating through online learning. Whether there will be a need to go back to more communication and more interaction between students and staff, I think is an important aspect of this. But it's really a question of taking the best of online provision and then linking that to the experience of students on campus to get a more balanced arrangement, as we heard just recently with regards to the Middlesex provision.
Thank you very much.
I can just add a comment. I thought it's quite fascinating that before there was this strict dichotomy. You were either an online provider or a face-to-face provider. And this current scenario has almost forced us to break down those barriers. And you've got to think of students as easily making transitions from the online space to coming to campus and attending some bits, and then perhaps moving back to further learning online. And that has been an interesting opportunity as well as a challenge for us, particularly at Middlesex, to manage those interesting modes of study.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stephen. Thank you, Mohammed Miraj. We have a question directly for Dr. Jason. It's from our own Nitesh. Do the international accreditation bodies consider both campuses together and comparatively, or they treat them as individual entities?
Okay, so the ones we've been involved with really look at both of them independently as such, but some of the accreditation bodies will not let the branch campus actually go for accreditation by itself. It requires the home to go together with the home campus there, and they will have accreditation visits to each of those campuses to quality assure them independently and to ensure that there's consistency across those there. So while there is accreditations that we can go for independently as a branch campus, the style that we're looking for is the ones that we can go and get the accreditation with the home campus to stay involved there. So that answers the question.
Thank you very much. The second question is for both universities, for Manipal and Middlesex. We have a question about benchmarking. Do you conduct any benchmarking, whether with an institution, whether with a higher education institution or with a different company in a different field?
Mm-hmm. Okay, if I can probably step in there first, Miraj. Yes, that's one of the things we look at, and that's certainly myself being Australian, working in a multinational type of environment and working in a number of countries there. I'm looking at best practices across each area. There are benchmarks for universities in terms of not only education, in terms of finances and other areas as well. And I think that quality is really about meeting some of those benchmarks and exceeding some of those benchmarks. So I think it gives you a target to get to, and certainly a target to exceed if you possibly can. So I generally look at not just UAE universities, not just Indian universities, but I'm looking at the best of the best, whether it's the UK, whether it's Australia, whether it's the States, wherever, trying to achieve the same sort of outcomes there.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to second that and say that you can benchmark processes, and for that you have some very, very relevant reference points, both here within the UAE for branch campuses, but also from international best practices, because we may be working with employees or working with colleagues from so many different parts of the world who are experts in their own field. So that opportunity for process benchmarking exists. And also for institutions like ours who operate from a very well developed higher education sector, there are very good standards available for benchmarking outcomes. So for example, student satisfaction data, there are standard surveys. The NSS, for example, is one which we also get our students to complete here. That's a good reference point. We are able to benchmark, progression rates, achievements of our students, in terms of grades and so on, both with our home campus and across the sector. And of course, activities or exercises like the KHDA does with its classification system, where it provides a very, very detailed metric for institutions to rate themselves against and then get these ratings is a fantastic development which should be commended at the local level.
Thank you very much. I know we are beyond time, but I'll try to accommodate one or two more questions. I have a question here asking about, actually it's for Dr. Jason. It's talking about what KPIs that have you been used in Manipal for the,
Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, they are talking about any certain KPIs that you have your focus, especially regarding assessments. Also, I have a follow-up question from the pre-registration. They are talking about if you give your thoughts about quality assurance in teaching learning key parameters.
Sure, and in terms of the assessments there, and certainly the KPIs we use are based around the home campus moderation results over there, and we try to meet or exceed those. Teaching and learning is the same. I think that one of the things we've found, as Miraj was mentioning there, was that I think most of the institutions really appreciate the classification scheme that have been put in place, because that does set the benchmark and it does give us KPIs. So when I develop my strategy or anything else, I'm looking at each of those KPIs that are around those metrics we're given in the classification scheme. That's our target. We want to exceed that. And I'm sure Stephen would agree that when you look at the criteria for the rating system, it perfectly aligns with what we're trying to achieve in terms of quality assurance, a lot of cases there. So I think we all very much appreciate that. And in terms of KPIs across all those parameters, not just examinations, not just teaching, that's certainly one of the targets we aim to meet. And I'm sure Miraj would say we'd like to greatly exceed.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Miraj, there is a question for you in the chat. If you can graciously open the chat and answer it directly. It's about co-creation curriculums. In the meanwhile, I would ask the last question to Dr. Stephen. We have a question about what mistakes should your university avoid when applying quality assurance practices?
How long have we got for this particular question?
We have 30 seconds, sir.
I think the main sort of problems that institutions come across with quality assurance is about the robustness and security of the procedures that they put in place. I think institutions are generally very good at designing processes. It's actually the operation of those processes that can cause difficulties if everybody is not involved and not engaged. I think it's important that within institutions, quality is seen as a responsibility that is shared by everyone. And everyone has to be engaged in the processes. Everyone has to be committed to ensuring the highest quality and standards of provision. So bringing people on board, I think, is perhaps the biggest challenge that many institutions face with quality assurance. It's seen, I think, sometimes by staff as being part of a sort of bureaucratic requirement imposed on teaching staff by the central authorities within institutions. And that, I think, is always the wrong way around to look at it. I think quality needs to be developed from the bottom up. It needs to be shared by staff and students, and there has to be a whole institution culture for quality, as we've seen, I think, in the context of both Manipal and Middlesex, are good examples of where quality is in the DNA of the institution. It's well established and operates effectively.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for all our guest speakers. Now, with the spirit of quality assurance, my colleague Magnus will conduct a small quality assurance exercise and so we can drive this session to an end. Magnus, you have the board.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for sticking at it. I know we're way over time, but if I could just kindly ask you again to log on to menti.com, and we'll just have 2 more questions that we'd like to finish off with. So the Menti code again is 7457516, and we'll just have some 2 quick questions here. I will start sharing, and then if we move on to the overall, how satisfied were you with the quality of the content of the webinar, the structure of the webinar, and the presenter and their preparedness in responding to questions? If you could all just quickly answer that, we would be very, very grateful. Fantastic, really appreciate that. I think it was a fantastic and very detailed webinar today. Fantastic presentations from all the various heads of the universities. So I think we're all very, very grateful. Looks fantastic. My final question here that I'd like just to wrap up this webinar with is, what extra support, consider that we've talked about all these various ways of assessing and so forth, what extra support would you require in order to feel satisfied with your implementation process of the QA practices? So what extra support? Is it clearer directives that you're looking for? Is it more time potentially, or would you like to build more relationships with other QA bodies around the world? More coaching, more support, what are you looking for? Is it potentially more self-evaluation or independence? Fantastic, we're getting some answers here. Collaboration between campuses in the UE, yeah, greater collaboration. Issue common failings, okay, and informative sessions. So I believe the person there would like to have essentially more webinars, more informative sessions, and increased communication. Fantastic. I'll just give you another 20 seconds to answer that, or else we'll try and wrap up today. We are grateful that you are sticking around. I know it's almost 3:20. It seems like we've got some 3 answers. Fantastic. I want to say a big thank you, and then I'll hand over the word to Al-Mehtar again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Magnus. Finally, I would like to thank our guest speakers, Dr. Stephen, Dr. Jason, Mohammed Miraj. You've been wonderful. I would like to thank also KHDA team who've been working on those webinars, and thanking all the attendees who attended, who were graceful with their questions and their time. Of course, if you miss anything in the content of this webinar, you just Google "In This Together Dubai" and you will see all of our previous webinars. Hopefully this one will be uploaded soon over there. We appreciate your time. Hopefully we can see you and meet you and listen to other webinars in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, KHDA team. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.